It's a Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, and the absolute hottest team in the Western Conference right now is the Memphis Grizzlies. 6 victories in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dubs for the Grizzlies. Damichael and I have talked about how Memphis had to take advantage of this stretch of games. They most certainly have done that. We're going to talk about how they've gotten it done and more on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Joe Mullinax, joining you today, and I am with, of course, Damichael Cole, the commercial appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. Make sure you're following him on X at Damichael C. I've been covering the Grizzlies here, there, and everywhere for over a decade. I'm currently a contributor over at Grizzlies, but of course, I am perhaps best known at this point for being one of your hosts of Locked On Grizzlies each and every time that an episode drops. And we have a newsletter now, Damichael. I don't know if you know that or not, but we have a Locked On Grizzlies newsletter.
One of the best out there, yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, buddy. That makes me feel nice. Obviously, we had a pretty strong month of November. Thank you to everybody that subscribes and reads the newsletter. If you don't, LockedOnDaily.com, go to the Grizzlies tab, click on that, find how to subscribe, check out the words that I write just about every day talking about the Memphis Grizzlies. I do think we're going to have to draw the line at Christmas, partner, at some point, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We got a few weeks to go until we get to the big fat guy in red breaking into all our houses. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. As proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, literally anywhere you can get a podcast. Make sure you are making Damichael and myself part of your Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. The Memphis Grizzlies are dropping people left and right, Damichael Cole.
Yeah,
I know you've had a chance over the last week to see a lot of it in person with the homestand. Mm-hmm. What an impressive run for this Grizzlies team against 6 wins in a row. There are only 3 teams as of this recording, Damichael Cole, that have a better point differential than the Memphis Grizzlies in the entire NBA. That would be the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Boston Celtics, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Even the Houston Rockets, who currently are, I think, a half game or so in front of Memphis in the West, the Grizzlies have a better point differential than them. Obviously, that's not what determines the standings, but it does suggest that what your eyes are seeing is backed up by the numbers. The Grizzlies, at this moment, are one of the best teams in the National Basketball Association. We're just going to ignore that first quarter, though, that the Grizzlies played against the Indiana Pacers on Sunday afternoon. That didn't happen. 45 points. I didn't see any 45 points being scored by the Pacers. We're just going to focus on the other 3 quarters, right? That's the fun part.
Yeah, I don't want to ignore it, Joe, because
you're such a buzzkill to Michael Cole.
No. You'll like where I'm going with this. I don't want to ignore it because when I watched the first quarter, when I was there, I said, this is good for them. And it was because if you go to the previous 4 games, all were double-digit wins, and even the other win, the first win during the 6-game win streak, like there wasn't a huge clutch time. You know, it wasn't a lot of like clutch time minutes being played, like the last 5 minutes of the game within a couple possessions. So they pretty much not only won these games, they've all been in dominant fashion. So you haven't seen a team jump out on the Grizzlies to the extent that the Indiana Pacers did, 45-28. Right out of the gate in the first quarter, looked like Indiana was making everything. Talking to all the Grizzlies players after the game, they kept talking about how Indiana's pace, which was a big talking point before the game, but when they got into battle, we know how the Grizzlies like to play with pace. But another team, trying to play as fast or even faster than them, it kind of, it took them a bit to catch their stride. But I say all that to say it was good for them because I never doubted that they would win the game when they were down 45-28. It was just more like, okay, how are they going to get out of this? This is what we haven't seen. Most of these games, Joe, either first quarter, second quarter, they're up double digits. They cruise in the second half. Then you hear the crowd saying, we want Yuki, and everyone's on the bench chilling. Like, no, at some point, That's not how the playoffs is going to be. And I said it before the game too. Like at some point we're going to, in this, next week as we talk about these games, it's going to get here. But at some point you want to see how this team is going to perform in clutch time and all that. And look, I know everyone's all for these I guess stress-free in a way type of wins. So yeah, I think the first quarter was a part of that. They adjusted and they adjusted fast. And that's another testament to the direction that this team is going in right now. Completely shifted the game. Indiana scored 45 points in the first quarter. They combined to score 46 in the next 2 quarters.
Pretty impressive defensive effort, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later on in the show. One John Morant, in fact, playing some of the best defense of his career so far. So he deserves a shout out on that end, and we will talk about that here in a bit. I want to shout out the unbelievable play of Marcus Smart. And to a much lesser extent, I want to shout out myself because nobody else does it. Everybody else likes to point out how dumb I am when I say things.
Or pat the back, Joe. You gotta pat the back.
I wrote for Grizzlies, I think it was Tuesday of last week, how Marcus Smart was the reserve that the Memphis Grizzlies needed. And lo and behold, and in fairness, I wasn't alone in saying that, but I'm the one that wrote an article called Marcus Smart is the reserve Memphis needs. And wouldn't you know it, Marcus Smart has come out and absolutely cooked the last several games. He is a noticeable shift of energy and physicality, tenacity, whatever itty you want to put in there in terms of physical play, in terms of physical play. There is a lot to be said for how Marcus Smart is contributing to this team in that reserve role. And I want to stress, there's been a bit of a movement on social media, and I know you probably haven't seen this, partner, because you're much more disciplined in social media than I am. The patting on the back like I just did for an article that I wrote. Obviously, that was tongue-in-cheek, right?
Right.
There have been people saying, well, this should have been what they did all along. Why was this always a concern? Marcus Smart always should have been the reserve. As you and I have talked about numerous times, partner, there is a team chemistry aspect to this. The fact that Marcus Smart has been a starter on teams that made the NBA Finals, it is much easier to just say,
speak on it. Speak on it.
Bench, let him go sit. Marcus Smart is the most experienced winner the Memphis Grizzlies have. And until he's okay with it, it was never going to work. And I think we've reached that point now.
Yeah, as Marcus said to me like a little while ago, not too long, maybe a couple weeks ago, the Grizzlies traded for him. And when a team trades for you, there is clearly a needed from a value standpoint. There was this whole talk about, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Marcus Smart, the last 2 defensive player of the years, anchoring the Grizzlies defense, all these cool things, him being alongside of Ja, Desmond Bane and all that. It didn't make sense, from what the Grizzlies were trying to do to put him on the bench, at that time because of what we just said. I mean, at the end of the day, NBA players, they try to leave it at the door, but NBA players have egos, and it's easy for NBA players to have egos because just about every NBA player that you can think of dominated not just their city, but their state in high school basketball. And I like to point that out a lot. Like, these guys pretty much most of their lives were the best players on the floor. In college, for the most part too, Desmond Bane was all conference. John Conchar, over there at IU in Fort Wayne was doing his thing, right? Jake LaRavia, one of the better players in the ACC, his years. And you come to the Grizzlies, you have to accept this role where you're doing less for the long-term betterment of more. Now, how that applies to Marcus Smart is there was a process here, and I wrote about it a little bit on yesterday too, just about how the fact that Taylor Jenkins had to have a conversation with him, and there are some similarities between Taylor Jenkins and Marcus Smart that kind of makes that conversation a little bit easier. And the main one is they both care a lot about winning. How they're adjusting this thing is they know Marcus Smart wants to win, right? So the difference is he's not starting games. But, Joe, how many times do we talk about it on the show, the closing lineups?
Marcus matters more.
Marcus Smart is in the closing lineup right now. I know they've been blowouts. Like we said, we haven't seen a lot of clutch minutes, so we'll get a bigger sample size of if that's the right decision or whatever the case may be. But right now it looks right. I think the closing lineup in this last game against the Pacers before, they brought the subs in was Ja Morant, Desmond Bain, Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Santi Aldama. That seems like a really solid pairing or, a lineup to close a game with when teams are going to be switching a lot of things, attacking weaknesses on defensive end and things like that. So Marcus Smart has really elevated his play. In the 4 games since he's been back, he's been a positive plus-minus guy. In the 2 games before that, before he had the bout with food poisoning, he was in the negative in plus-minus. So he's come back. He's been an impactful player. And it's not just the scoring, it's the passing and assists. This last game, 16 points, 6 assists. In addition to the defense, the steals, the deflections. We're really starting to see a lot of it now with him diving all over the floor. Like we got a little taste of it last season. You'd be like, oh, yeah, that's what the Celtics fans were talking about. Now, Joe, it feels like it's been like 3 games in a row where we've seen him just fly across the floor to get a basketball.
That's the kind of basketball I like to watch, right? I've said several times, basketball is a contact sport. I like to see guys get after it like that. Marcus Smart's a throwback in that way. And I really like that he plays for the Memphis Grizzlies. Doesn't mean that there couldn't potentially be trades down the road, right? The armchair GM can only sit out for so long. But you definitely need to respect what he contributes, and you need to accept that he's going to be a part of this rotation, right? Because that's going to be the next big conversation as Zach Edey returns, Vince Williams Jr., G.G. Jackson down the road over the next several weeks. What in the world does this rotation look like? I'm not sure roster consolidation makes sense given how many injuries this team has had. So who is your in and out every night rotation? That's going to be something that you need to make sure you're sticking around and hearing about here on Locked On Grizzlies. But I have a sneaky suspicion you're exactly right, partner. Marcus Smart's going to be a part of that closing group. Let Damichael and I know what you guys think of the current run, 6 games in a row. Obviously, Memphis, the competition is going to step up a little bit starting Tuesday night. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But a good win for the Grizzlies and a good run of games. When you say that you're supposed to win and then you win, you should tip your cap. The Grizzlies are doing their jobs right now. Somebody that's really doing their job right now is Ja Morant. We're going to talk about how he is becoming one of the better two-way players. I said it, two-way players on the Memphis Grizzlies coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by BetterHelp. My favorite parts of the holidays is spending time with loved ones, the bright lights, the Christmas parties, seeing everybody exchanging gifts. I love just being around those that I care the most about. It's how I stay cozy in these winter months. Some people like to drink hot chocolate, watch a movie. They think that's the best way in the month of December to get cozy. Therapy is a great way to bring yourself comfort as well, and that can never go away, even as the seasons change. If you're thinking of starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. So I mentioned a moment ago the defense of Ja Morant. And I wrote about it over in our Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Again, go to LockedOnDaily.com. If you're not already subscribed, click on the Grizzlies tab, subscribe. Each and every day, you'll get words from me about the Memphis Grizzlies, also national topics, all sorts of great stuff. Check out the newsletter. But did I mention it was free? 100% free. You don't have to pay me a dime. I don't know how it works. They just give me money every month, and I keep doing it. It's going great. But I enjoy doing it. Right. And I wrote about Ja Morant's defensive acumen and how it has grown, not just this past, 10 games or so that he's played this year, but he was pretty solid last year too, at times defensively. And one of the major overarching narratives, you know how we love narratives here at Locked On Grizzlies. One of the narratives of Ja Morant's career on the court has been how he cannot be Trae Young. And what I mean by that is both Trae Young and Ja Morant have dramatic offensive positive impacts, right? For all the people like to make fun of Trae Young, he is a guy that can shoot the lights out of the basketball, elite in terms of creating offensive opportunities for teammates. Ja Morant doesn't do it with his shooting. He does it with his athleticism, right? So similar contributions. Trae Young, defensive sieve, right? And even he's improved a little bit over the last year or so. But for his career, Trae Young, defensive monstrosity in a bad way. Ja Morant, early in his career, was also that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The numbers backed it up. Your eyes backed it up. We are now seeing Ja Morant invest himself more fully on the defensive end, because when you're as athletic as Ja Morant is, it's not like you magically become a bad defender, right? A lot of it has to do with effort. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm calling out Ja, because he's asked to do so much offensively that I think it's a valid reason that he's not the best defender on the planet. But as he continues to close that gap, it just maximizes the winning impact his offense makes. And that really shined against the Pacers. And then in the game before that against the Pelicans, numerous possessions where he's doing numerous things, not just chase down blocks that are shiny highlights, but good, strong rotations, closing out on shooters. Opposing teams are shooting 7% worse from beyond the arc when Ja Morant is on the floor, as opposed to when he's not on the floor. That's a career best mark to this point for Ja, and that's per cleaning the glass. I got to tell you, if he can keep doing this, this is the kind of stuff that puts you in the MVP conversation for me. You are able to impact winning on both ends of the floor. Offensively, it's never been a question for Ja. Defensively has been the question, and that question's being answered more so now than it ever has been.
Yeah, it's effort. It's pride, and it's I'm not gonna let guys pick on me. As Marcus Smart said when I asked him about this, it's the difference of Ja defensively. He said you can't pick on him. You cannot pick on Ja, and that wasn't always the case. As recent as that playoff series against the Lakers, right? How many times did we see late in the games, Ja Morant, whoever was assigned to Ja Morant, that Lakers player would come up and give LeBron James a screen, so LeBron could either get a switch with Ja Morant guarding him, or when they hedge it, create an advantage for the Lakers. So basically, that is something that Ja Morant took note of. Even going into last season, we only saw him play 9 games, but he told me during last season that he was taking it personal now. Like, teams going at him and things like that. Now we're starting to see more of it into this season. I think it's the effort, and the new offense is helping that process as well. Again, you got multiple guys. I mean, another night, Joe, 36 assists. They're leading the NBA in assists right now. The Grizzlies are, and they have another night with 36 assists. And it's not just Ja, it's Dez. It's Scottie Pippen Jr. and his role off the bench. It's Marcus Smart who had 6 assists coming off the bench. I think Dez had 6 assists as well. Like, it's all these different guys who are decent to above average playmakers being able to take the pressure off of Ja Morant, so he's not going high pick and roll, making plays for everyone, every play up the court on the offensive end, where he's having to save, some energy on the defensive side of the ball. As Ja said himself, it's what's needed. He knows he's got to be a better defender, though. He knows how important that is to this Grizzlies team getting to where they want to be. You need Ja to be a better defender. The way I would categorize what I've seen from him on the defenses so far is he's trying hard. And that's kind of what you want from him. And it's not just, with his effort. It's other things. I don't think most people have noticed, but Ja Morant's gained 12 pounds. He put on some weight this past offseason. So he's stronger. He jokes a lot about the fact that, he's still listed at, I think, 174 on the NBA side. Ja Morant is 174 pounds. So there's that part of it as well. And he's just taking pride in it. Like yesterday, we were in the locker room. He's looking at the stat sheet, and he's like, they only credit me with 1 steal. And then he jokes it off like, I guess they're not used to me playing defense yet. Like, so things like that. He's kind of buying in, I guess is the way to put it, to the fact that he has to be a strong defender this season. We've already talked about how Taylor Jenkins has challenged Desmond Bane. He's challenged Ja. Uncomfortable conversations, but real conversations that needed to be had, centered around the fact, hey, you two, we depend on you a lot on the offensive end, but we need you to be very good defensively if we're going to take that next step forward.
I think the minutes going down has helped a little bit in that way too.
Yeah,
not
short bursts. That's the other term around here, short bursts. Yeah.
You talked earlier in the show about the pace that the Pacers play with, not ironically at all. They are one of the fastest teams in the NBA as well. You have guys like Tyrese Halliburton playing 37 minutes. Remember when people said that Tyrese Halliburton was better than Ja Morant? That was cute.
Oh,
that was
a long time ago.
Conversation. I'm not going to take that victory lap. I only give myself 1 victory lap a show. I already took it. with Marcus Smart. But I do remember being very angry about how stupid that was, and I was right. So were you, partner, in fairness. Everybody in Memphis that knew that was dumb. But anyway, I digress. I think that the 27 minutes a game, right? Like, again, only one guy played 30 minutes in this game, and that was Desmond Bane. And this is a game that the Grizzlies were down by 17 at the end of the first quarter.
Yeah.
So it is purposeful, right? And obviously, if you've watched the Grizzlies, like chances are many of you watching or listening to this program, you've checked out the Grizzlies a time or two this year. This is purposeful. This is how they are executing their schemes. This is how they're running their rotations. You mentioned the assists. 5 guys had 5 or more assists, and only one of them was a true point guard in Ja Morant. Bane with 6, Santi Aldama with 6, Jake LaRavia. How in the world, going back to the rotation conversation, how do you bench Jake LaRavia when this team is healthy? I don't know how you do
Not right now. You can't do it.
Marcus Smart with 6 assists. So it's really impressive how this team is executing. And again, Ja Morant, I want to stress, he is asked to do so much offensively, especially in the old schemes that they ran. Now that the love is being spread a little bit there, he's able to perhaps push himself a little bit more defensively, combining that with that short burst mentality. It's adding up to a really noticeable change in Ja defensively. I'm excited for it. I know you are too. Let us know in the comments. Hit us up on X. How do you guys feel about Ja Morant closing that gap? Again, he's probably never going to be Drew Holiday, right? And that's totally okay. Yeah. Just closing that gap and being a better defender so that his offensive impact is felt even more. A guy whose impact on both ends of the floor has been felt for Memphis for years now is Jaren Jackson Jr., putting together an all-star campaign. But I'm going to put Damichael Cole on the spot here in a moment. I'm going to make him make a choice sitting here today as a bit of a preview of our show tomorrow. What would he see happening first? Jaren Jackson Jr. becoming a multiple-time all-star this year, or Jalen Wells making the all-rookie team? We're going to talk about that next, coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, I can't give you a hunch this coming week because the Commanders aren't playing. They finally are on their bye the first full week of December. That doesn't make any sense, but whatever. Maybe you have another hunch about a lesser football team than the Washington Commanders. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. We close out today's episode, partner, talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. and Jalen Wells. And again, this is a bit of a preview of what's to come tomorrow. So on tomorrow's show, I know Damichael knows this. Maybe you, dear listener, dear viewer, maybe you've been so entrenched in Thanksgiving and the holiday prep. We're officially a quarter of the way through the season for the Memphis Grizzlies, right? We're right there. And we're going to do surprises of the start of the season, disappointments of the start of the season before we preview because it's the cup, brother. The cup finale, brother. Have the Grizzlies been eliminated from that, by the way, or do they actually still have a chance? I honestly don't know.
Small chance.
Oh God,
it's not happening. It's like 3 teams. If they win, I think the Grizzlies will be out. So
maybe we'll start a GoFundMe to send you to Vegas just for a fun trip, just to go and enjoy yourself. But that's literally the only reason I wanted them to make it. So I'm not losing any sleep over it. But anyway, we'll talk about that cup group play finale on Tuesday. This is a preview of that. The 2 biggest surprises for me so far this season are Jaren Jackson Jr. and Jalen Wells. Jaren playing at this level, maybe it shouldn't be a surprise because he is in a contract extension window and he's trying to get that money, which I will always advocate for athletes maximizing this window to make an absurd amount of money for putting a ball through a hoop, right? Yeah. So good for them. Go do it, right? Go do your thing. So maybe we shouldn't be as surprised by that, but I am. Like he has legitimately been their MVP so far this season.
Yeah.
And then you've got Jalen Wells, who has come out of nowhere to be a legitimate starter to the point or somebody like me, and to a lesser extent you, I don't want to put words in your mouth, we have been two of the guys advocating for Marcus Smart being a starter more than anybody, right? And at least I'll speak for myself. I advocated for it a lot. I don't see how you make that argument anymore with the way that Jalen Wells is playing on both ends of the floor. Doesn't need to be a superstar because you got your superstar in John Morant. He doesn't need to be an all-star caliber player because you got Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane as he gets out of this funk. He just needs to be a glue role-playing, elite role player like you like.
That's what he's doing. Yeah.
And that's exactly what he's doing. And I think that makes him a lock for the all-rookie team. So I'll pose this question to you, Damichael Cole.
Yeah.
What is more likely at this stage of the season? Jaren Jackson Jr. making another all-star team, right? Because it can be a popularity contest to an extent. Maybe Ja gets in on the fan vote. But could Jaren make another all-star team? Or Jalen Wells being an all-rookie selection this season? What's more likely December 2nd sitting here today?
I'm going to go with Jalen Wells on the all-rookie team as of this very moment, simply because he's been one of the best rookies, period. I know there have been stretches. Some guys have played well, like Bub Carrington. He had a stretch where he was looking really good, but Jared McCain, same thing. He's kind of come down the last few games.
Castle in San Antonio, too, looking pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you got so many really good, and Castle's been coming on as of late more as he's kind of going to the starting lineup. But Jalen Wilson has been solid, and what he's going to have going for him is the fact that he's going to get that boost from playing on a team that right now is third in the Western Conference, and he's playing impactful minutes because he's starting. So I think that's going to be a boost for him to be on the all-rookie team. Whether he's first team or second team, that's to be determined. But right now, I think he's pretty much a lock. Jaren Jackson Jr., I wouldn't say he's a lock to be an all-star, but I like his chances right now. I like his chances more than Ja's at this point of time for the Grizzlies, simply because of the, number one, the availability factor there. Two, I mean, the scoring has been very efficient every single level. You know, he has one of the top floaters in the NBA right now. He's one of the best at finishing with the floater. His three-point shooting has been pretty much efficient. He's averaging over 20 points per game, and he's doing so while, again, another guy who's playing under 30 minutes per game. So if he was playing, more time, because foul trouble has not really been a thing, for him much of this season so far. So there are a lot of progressions happening in Jaren's game. You mentioned the fact that he's being impactful on offense, on defense, averaging over a steal per game, averaging over a block per game. I'm loving what I'm seeing out of Jaren. Like, this is a real star to me. With him and Ja, they are pretty much 1A, 1B, at this point. Like, I think that Jaren has the ability to take over games just like Ja does in stretches. Now, Ja's, able to take over games in more ways because it's not just getting downhill and scoring for Ja. Ja can dominate a game and finish with 12 points just because, he puts that much pressure, on the defense. So Jaren's not, quite to that level of taking over a game, but his defensive ability combined with him being one of the NBA's top isolation and most efficient isolation scorers right now, he's right up there for me. The one thing, and I'm sure you'll probably touch on it, Joe, is the Western Conference. I mean, I was looking at the list earlier, and I saw a post on X not too long ago about it too, where someone listed about 20 names, and they said, there's going to be 6, 7 of these guys that don't qualify for the All-Star game in the Western Conference, and it was some tough sledding in there. I mean, you go to most of these teams, like a team like Sacramento, you got De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and DeMar DeRozan all playing at a high caliber level for them. And they're in that 9-10 range in the Western Conference right now. And that's a team that has 3 guys capable. We know LeBron James, Father Time is starting to, it's knocking a little louder on that door now, Joe. It's knocking a little louder on LeBron's door, but I feel like confidently in saying he'll be there. Anthony Davis has still been the best player on the Lakers. That's 5 players right there on teams that aren't even at the top of the Western Conference. What about Alperen Sengun leading Houston to the number 2 seed over there? What about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? What about Jalen Williams having this big breakout season that he's having? What about Victor Wembanyama, right? What about It's so many names. We'll be all day. That's gonna be the toughest part of it for Jaren. With Jalen, I think the picture's a little bit more clear. But if you were asking me at this moment if I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is an all-star, yeah.
I think Wells is the easy answer, right? Because of all the reasons that you just articulated. But I do think Jaren is playing extremely well. Jaren has only a 5.5, and again, I love to use cleaning the glass efficiency differential, right? He's plus 5.5, which is pretty good. His defense is the best, perhaps, that it's ever been in terms of his impact. Opposing teams are scoring 12.5 points less per 100 possessions when Jaren Jackson Jr. is on the court. Even in his Defensive Player of the Year season, that was just minus 5.5. That's how dramatic the impact has been for Jaren. However, the team is scoring 7 points fewer per 100 possessions when Jaren is on the court. I don't know why that might be, and that's something maybe we dive into a little bit more on a future episode of Locked On Grizzlies. His offensive numbers are so good, yet the team scores less when he's on the floor. Maybe it's a pace thing. You know, it feels like there's a deeper dive that could be done there. So I think Jaren is having an all-star caliber season. I do not know that he will be named an all-star for the reasons that you just outlined. Assuming Jalen Wells doesn't get injured, right? Assuming he stays on the court, I don't know how he regresses so poorly to not be at least second team. He has been very impressive. And he's going to be on a team that is trying to make the playoffs, which is a major difference from somebody else that may not have that opportunity playing on a worse team. That's important to point out as well. Let us know in the comments what you guys think. Are you thinking Wells all rookie like us? What's your argument for Jaren as an all-star? The odds are stacked against him there. I would argue he may have a better chance at all NBA than all-star, which doesn't make a ton of sense, but there's no popularity vote component with all NBA. When next time we're together will be Tuesday. Again, we already kind of gave you an outline of what we're going to talk about. Surprises and disappointments of the young season so far. It's not that young anymore, right? We're a quarter of the way through. And then we'll preview the NBA Cup finale between the Grizzlies and the Dallas Mavericks. I know you know this, partner. Luka Doncic is back for the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
And holy moly, he is destroying people. So that's going to be a challenge.
It's going to be fun. I can't wait for this week. You know, like I said earlier, like the Grizzlies have just been dominating opponents. So it's getting to the point now where I mean, you know, like I said, sure, people would love to see them just obliterate everyone the rest of the season, but that's not realistic. So you're going to play some teams like in this coming week. You got the Mavs, you got the Kings, you got the Celtics, all teams that'll walk in the building and feel confident in their ability and beat you. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those games play out.
It's going to be a good week of Grizzlies basketball. Looking forward to covering it with Damichael and hanging out with you each and every time an episode drops here on Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you for being here on this Monday edition of the show. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Again, we're proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Make sure you're subscribing to the Locked On Daily newsletter. Locked On Grizzlies has a daily newsletter. Words from me each and every single time that a newsletter hits, which is basically every day. You even got one on Thanksgiving and Black Friday this past week. Again, we'll talk about Christmas. I feel like I'm going to have to give myself a break somewhere, but I like writing the newsletter. Make sure you're subscribing. Check out LockedOnDaily.com. Subscribe. Get it in your inbox each and every single day. For Damichael Cole, I am Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in. We're talking NBA Cup finales, surprises and disappointments of our next episode. Make sure you're with us. Until then, stay safe. We'll catch you next time.